Okay, so this is your store. It looks great. One of the things that I would say is, let's say that we're wanting to create, give me an idea for something that you would like to create, but you're like, I wonder if it's out there. Just throw something out there.
So I know it's out there, but one of my resources that I keep wanting to make sure that I get up there is actually a sequencing activity, but with biblical stories like Bible clip art. I already have the packs. And then what would happen is there would just be different like squares or circles, whatever shape I put the picture in. And the kids would have the Bible story. And I always like to put in the message for anybody who's like comfortable and understands, like just to paraphrase, because it's also easier for younger levels. It's not as much these and thous and everything. So They would have the story, and then they would have pictures, and then they would have the extra like sheet for them. Some of them would have stems like first, next, then. Some of them would be for older grades, things like that. And then what they would do is they would read, they would highlight in certain colors, and then they would reorder, paste the pictures, and then rewrite the first, next, then to do a sequencing of the Bible story just to help practice.
So if I type in Bible story sequencing, am I going to come up with something? In my mind, story sequencing and Bible story sequencing are totally different. Yeah, because we're talking about a completely different subject, like a completely different topic. Okay. So the person who wants Bible story sequencing is not going to be the same teacher, more than likely, that's going to be looking for just a story sequencing activity. So when we talked about earlier, we talked about making something better or making something different. To me, that's making something different.
Right.
And in the same way that if I see a bingo activity, for example, now bingo is extremely prevalent. It's everywhere, right? No one can claim like I'm the one who makes bingo sheets. But if I see a bingo activity that I really love in ELAR, but it hasn't been brought into the math world yet, obviously without copying like their template verbatim, like I'm not doing any of that. If I bring that bingo type game over into the math world, that's different. It's a whole different ball game. I'm not competing with their resources. I'm not doing anything like that. So if you're creating a Bible story sequencing activity, that is different from just story sequencing. Does that make sense? You're not competing with them. So I've got sequencing and retelling the Bible story. So I've got one there. The prodigal son story sequencing. So I'm looking at who am I directly competing with? What do they have? And how can I make mine better or different? So this would immediately be assuming that they're in the same grade level as you, although I'm seeing a lot of pre-K first. What grade level would you be creating this for?
I generally aim for 3rd through 5th.
Okay, so I'm going to go to 3rd, and I'm going to see what I can find for 3rd grade. So we've got story cards, sequencing worksheets, Bible story sequencing that's like 2nd through 8th. So what I would do is I would go through, I'm not going through every single page of search results. I mean, you can see I've got like 230 results. No reason in the world why you should feel obligated to look at every single one. Just no reason. I'm going to look at the top resources. I'm going to see what do they have in common, and would I be bringing to the table that would be different from those commonalities. Okay. What that's going to do is it's going to give me not only a competitive edge to either say like, hey, I'm going to bring something better in, or I'm going to bring my own twist in where I think that this might be a little bit more appropriate. Or perhaps you see like, oh, a lot of these like upper level ones, maybe they don't have a lot of clip art, and you want to bring in the clip art like the younger grade levels, but you want it to be a little bit more age appropriate or something like that. That's fine too. That's different. That's meeting a specific need in the market that their resources are not meeting. But then just looking at what all does this include? What doesn't it include that I would like for mine to include? And maybe is there something in their particular resource that I don't feel is necessary? And so maybe I could take this out and exchange it with that and still have a competitive price point. So kind of looking at that. Right. So that is the only thing that I would be doing is I would be going through looking for resources that are very similar to what I would be creating, or at least reasonably similar, pulling them up, looking through the previews, looking for areas, because you can see like this one right here, is this super cool? Yeah. Could it benefit from some clip art? Yeah, probably so. What is it missing? How can I make mine different? And even like meshing two ideas together is still unique and still different. still meeting a unique need in the market. So to say like, I love the idea of having the sequencing being pictorial, but I also love the idea of having the sequencing being like this. So maybe teachers have two options, or maybe they're put together. Like, you know what's going to be best, but it should only take you maybe 30, 45 minutes tops to go through and do this market research to see what's currently there. How is mine going to be different? After I've done that research, that is where I step back and I say, okay, I've done my research. I know my resource is going to be different from what's on the market. It's going to be better, or it's going to meet a unique need. And from there, I'm not going to worry about what happens between this time that I've researched it and the day that I release it, right? I think there's also that tendency to have that fear of the in-between in their store, or is like about to publish it to their store. There's some things you just can't know. So you do what you can do. And then past that, that's all we can do. At the end of the day, unless it looks like exactly identical, there's not anything that they can do. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing that they can do. So they may not like it in the same way that I might not like it if somebody else has a resource that's very, very similar to mine on the market. But unless they've specifically copied me, there's not anything I can do about it. It's a free market. So as long as your conscience is clear, you know you've done your due diligence, you know you've done what's right, like just we're not going to worry about it. We're not going to sweat it. When I'm looking through your store, so in terms of like, we've done our market research, we've created this high quality resource, and then now it comes time to list that resource. There are a couple of things that are standing out to me in terms of room for improvement, for getting more traction for your resource, perhaps getting more eyes on it, and hopefully getting more sales. And this is just a quick, very, very quick glance through your store. I don't do deep dive store audits in these coaching calls because there's just simply not enough time. But going through, I can see like you've spent a lot of time on your branding. Your branding looks really good. There's one thing that you've missed though with your branding that a lot of sellers miss, and that is choosing a nice, bold color to go on your covers. So when I'm looking at this, your choices are, if people want to be able to like read this at a glance and it not blend into the white, because they're going to be like reading it super fast, your choice is black. I mean, that's the only color that you have. And there's nothing wrong with black. That's not to say there's anything wrong with black, but I don't necessarily think that it goes with your vibe. So I would think about either changing your existing colors or adding some deeper, bolder colors to your color palette, your branding color palette, so that you have some to choose from for your covers, because it makes it really difficult at a glance. Like if I'm scrolling, I can't read it. If I'm just like, I have to like stop and kind of look on some of these, especially. Same for your, exactly. Yeah. Same for your logo. I love the idea of putting a logo on a cover, but I think that I would probably choose this particular round logo so that I can see the book. I can see the coloring of it, but I'm not having to feel like I need to read the words, and it's not taking up quite as much space, quite as much real estate on your cover. So I like this one, even though it's still hard to read. It's okay. I don't feel like I need to read it. But when it looks like this, I feel like I'm supposed to read it. So just kind of being mindful of that. Another thing that I'm noticing as I'm going through here is you have quite a few characters that you can use for your title. I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80, 85, and we're using very few of them. So going through and doing some of that research, and this is where you can actually, pardon the phrase, kill two birds with one stone. And when you're doing that market research in the beginning, you can go through and go ahead and take that time while you're already inside of the TPT search engine, looking for competitive products. Go ahead and start taking notes on alternate keywords that you can use besides just Foursquare writing bundle. So I've got graphic organizers, template, pack, writing method for these particular grade levels, putting in those particular grade levels, Foursquare organizers, things like that, like going through and making notes of the different keywords that are being utilized already in the search engine, and use as many of them as are applicable. That way you're more likely to show up for different search terms. And then of course, coming through and making sure that you're repeating all of those keywords that you picked for your title. They're all getting repeated through here. Other than that, you're tagging grade levels appropriately as far as I can see. You're fully filling everything out, which is really good. Obviously, we're not doing a deep dive on your covers or your previews or anything like that, but those are two things that I noticed like straight away that should give you a lot more traction in the search engine, because they're going to be able to read quicker, absorb the information, know what your product's about a lot faster. And then also it's going to allow you to be seen for more search terms. And that's it. All right. Let's go back to talking about your goals now. Excuse me. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to see the full coaching call with Paige, make sure and check out my channel so that you can see that. You can also find the link to that down in the description as well. Okay.